Just want to thank everybody for being here. My name is John Watts. I'm a consumer protection lawyer, and we're going to talk all about how to identify the errors on credit reports. And this is not going to be you listening to me. This is going to be, we're going to put some stuff up on the screen and just all look at this together and see if we can identify the errors together. So let me do a little bit of sort of background just to get us started here. And again, thank you everybody for being here. Lots of comments and just really good to have everybody on here. So I'm not going to take very long to do this, but I just want you to see kind of the lay of the land before we get into the credit reports, because I want you to understand what we're dealing with, what our options are with the law. So you'll notice this is from just last month. So this is not 5 years ago or 10 years ago. This is the CFPB, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, last month saying, here's a big special report on how terrible the credit bureaus are. So consumer reporting complaints, an analysis of complaint responses by Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. So you can see this thing is, 55 pages long. We'll just look at this executive summary. And let me just say this before we sort of dive into this. With the CFPB, you can submit a complaint to the CFPB if you've already disputed through the bureaus and you didn't get good response. And then the CFPB will forward those to the bureaus and they're supposed to investigate. And so this is really an analysis of that second part when you can't get it fixed and you go to the CFPB and then they go to the bureaus. But the insight they provide will be helpful for us when we're looking at doing a direct dispute to the credit bureaus. So they're talking about the NCRAs, that's nationwide consumer reporting agencies. We may call them the credit bureaus, the credit reporting agencies, consumer reporting agencies. We're talking about Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. And they say, look, we've had a bunch of increase in complaints and some real concerns about what's happening. So we're publishing this independent report. They normally do an annual report, but they said, wait a minute, something really bad, wrong has happened here. We've got to do this special report. And so look at this, from January of 2020, September 2021, 800,000 credit or consumer reporting complaints. Well, how many of those related to our friends at Equifax, Experian, TransUnion? It says more than 700,000. And this is more than 50% of all complaints in 2020, 60% in 2021. And so it says consumers are submitting more complaints in each complaint session. And then this is really critical because the CFPB is reminding us, we're going to look at the actual law, but they're reminding us that you can dispute inaccurate and incomplete information. Okay, now they use the word and, but it's really or, incomplete or inaccurate, or it could be both, okay? And they say, here are some of the problems. You're caught in an automated system. It's just sort of computers talking to each other. There aren't human beings, at least not native English speaking human beings, that will really look and investigate and make phone calls and do research to see, is your complaint correct or incorrect? Then they say consumers waste time, energy, and money trying to correct their reports. If you've ever done this on your own, you will be familiar with that. Being exasperated by the dispute process, not a word we use very often, just super frustrated, right? And some people even just pay bills they don't owe to try to protect their report and their scores. And then they're caught between the furnishers and the credit bureaus. So you've got the credit bureaus over here that report everything. And then you have the furnishers. The furnishers send the information to the credit bureaus every month. And when you dispute, the credit bureaus say, hey, go talk to the furnisher. The furnishers say, hey, go talk to the credit bureaus. And you're like, who's going to actually help me here? And then again, they just point out consumers have the right to dispute inaccurate and you have the right to dispute incomplete information. And this is really shocking here. So remember, we're talking about complaints going through the CFPB. That's not how we do things. When I do disputes, when Blaine Dixon, who's on this webinar, when he does disputes, we're going directly to the credit bureaus because that's what triggers their liability under the law. But just notice this. These are people that have already disputed with the credit bureaus, didn't get a good response, and now they go to the CFPB, and it says in 2021, the national credit bureaus reported relief in less than 2%. So every 100 people that take the time to submit a dispute through the CFPB, and the CFPB says, yes, this is something that needs to be passed on to the bureaus, like one, maybe two get fixed. Whereas in 2019, it was 25%. So you can see that number's just going down. And this is our experience too. When we do disputes to the credit bureaus, we're having less and less fixed, and even fewer times when the credit bureaus respond. Now, I don't care, because we're going to sue them when they don't respond, because our disputes are objective errors. And so whether they investigate, don't investigate, I don't care. We'll sue them if they don't get it fixed. And notice what the CFPB is saying here. The credit bureaus ignore this obligation, do not respond. They suspect a third party was involved. So this is your typical sort of credit repair place. And they'll say, well, we don't have to respond to that. That is not the law. Okay. But they just made that up and said, oh, if a credit repair place submitted, we don't have to respond. So they rely on speculative criteria. They leave many consumers without a response. And here's where I want to end this part on. The credit bureau's responses to these complaints raise serious questions about whether they are unable or unwilling to comply with the law. And that is probably the most accurate statement I've ever heard about the credit bureaus. They're either unable, which actually they're not unable, they're unwilling to comply with the law. Okay. So let's look now at where you get your credit reports. And if you've watched any of my videos, you've been on webinars, you know this. I'm not going to belabor this point. Go to annualcreditreport.com. Let me just pop this up, actually, where if you don't have this, let's see here. You should be able to click this on the screen, and this should open up a new window for you. Annualcreditreport.com. It's mission critical to get your real full credit reports, and it just so happens they're free every 7 days. So it's fantastic. And so that's where we really suggest that you pull your credit reports from. Now, let me show you the text of the FCRA. So we're only going to look at this one section, section 1681I, and then we're going to jump right into the credit reports here. But I just wanted to lay this foundation for us first. So this is what you can dispute through the credit bureaus. So when are you entitled to dispute information on the credit bureaus? And let me get rid of this. See if I can get this off the screen here. Okay, so this says if the completeness or accuracy, so that ought to ring familiar with what the CFPB said about you can dispute inaccurate information or incomplete information. If the completeness or accuracy of any item, well, what does any item mean? It means any item. They go, well, it doesn't mean like minor stuff. Well, no, if it's on my credit report, it is any item of information contained in a consumer's file at the Consumer Reporting Agency is disputed by the consumer, and you notify the agency shall free of charge conduct a reasonable investigation to see whether that is accurate or not. And if it's not, then they have to follow what's called paragraph 5. So let's scroll down to paragraph 5. And so notice this, if any reinvestigation under paragraph 1, that's what we're just looking at, of any information disputed. It doesn't say, well, if the majority of the information is not correct. No, it's any of the information disputed by a consumer, an item of information is found to be inaccurate or incomplete or cannot be verified. I don't spend so much time on the or be verified because most judges don't really accept that as a practical reality. And really we can accomplish what we need by the inaccurate or incomplete. The Consumer Reporting Agency shall. Now, what does the word shall mean? Down here. The word shall does not mean, hey, this would be, kind of a nice thing to do. It sure be, whoops, let me get that back here. It would sure be great. It's like a nice suggestion. No, this is you must do this. You have no option, no discretion. If you're a consumer bureau and you find information's inaccurate or incomplete, you must delete it. Now, you can also fix it, okay? But if you're not going to fix it, you got to delete it. Those are the two options here. So with that background, I want us to start looking at some credit reports. Let me just make sure we don't have any comments here, questions. Oh, and let me do two things, just if you're interested. If you want this FCRA text, this is just from the FTC, and then also here's the CFPB report. Now, both of these you can, just pull from the CFPB website or the FTC. They just, particularly that CFPB thing, I think you might find interesting to look at that. Okay, so now let's look here. Okay, John makes a comment here, or they must mark the item as in dispute. Well, I would say that that is in addition to what they have to do. So when they get a dispute, they have to fix it or delete it. Now, if they delete it, they don't have to mark it in dispute. If they fix it, they can say, item is disputed or was disputed. It gets a little technical on the language. But just leaving an item with inaccurate or incomplete information and putting that is disputed, it does not get them off the hook here. Their obligation is very, very specific. Delete or fix, that's their options, okay? Now, if they say it's totally fine, it's totally accurate, well, then they have to live with that. And if they're wrong, then they pay a price for that. So let's look now at a credit report. And this is a tri-merge report, what we would typically see with like a mortgage broker. And excuse me, somebody sent this in to me, and I'm appreciating that they sent this in, because I want us to look at this and also think about this for a moment. So knowing what the CFPB says, knowing what the FCRA says, we are looking for inaccurate or incomplete information. There are really two ways we can find inaccurate information. One is outside the credit report. So see here that, let me get my cursor here, this collection center or this Con Appliances or this Ally, okay? Let's take the Ally. It says there's a $7,000 balance here, okay? Well, if we have a letter from Ally 2 months before this saying, hey, thank you for paying off your loan, well, that would be something that's outside the credit report. So we could dispute this balance and say, here's a letter from Ally, okay? So that's from outside. But we also want to be able to look inside the report. And here's the challenge with a report like this. Now, this is tremendously helpful to, mortgage brokers, car dealers, people like that. For us, though, when we're looking to see, is all the information in what's called our consumer file, is that accurate? Is it complete? This does not help us very much because it's missing so much data. And we want the most possible data. That's why we don't use Credit Karma or Smart Credit or Identity IQ. We want the real full reports from annualcreditreport.com because that's where we get the most information. So for example, here, it tells us some payment history, okay? But we don't know what the balance was each month. We don't know what the scheduled payment was each month. We don't know what the amount paid was each month. We don't know, a lot of details here. What's the date of first delinquency, which tells us how long something will stay on our report. So this is very helpful if you're in the lending business. But if we're in the business of trying to either for ourselves or for our clients, I know we've got lawyers on here, or customers with the credit repair places that are on here, we really want the actual full detailed credit reports that we get directly from the bureaus by going through annualcreditreport.com. And I'll show you an example, and then if we have time, we'll come back to this. And let's see here. Let me just check out our messages here. Merle asks, how much would each violation cost TransUnion or a furnisher? So it depends. If it's just negligence, then you prove your damages. It may be emotional distress. It may be you lost out on the loan, or you're paying this interest rate instead of this interest rate. If you can prove it's willful or reckless, then you can get what are called statutory damages. And that can be up to $1,000. A little bit of argument between some judges is that $1,000 per violation or $1,000 per case, but you also get punitive damages if you can prove willfulness. So let's go, let's see, Diana. Okay. So I'll come back to some of these other questions. So let's look at this. This is an Equifax report. Okay. So you can see down here at the bottom, got Equifax. And so let's look at the data, and just looking at this summary, I want you to look at that. Don't look at anything else. Just look at the summary and type in, if you see any errors, what you think the errors would be. And so let's take a moment and do that and see if we can identify some errors. And then we'll kind of go through each section. And I just want all of us thinking together, what are the possible errors here? And don't worry about being wrong. There's no, master answer key here. We're just kind of looking at this together, all trying to get a little smarter, a little bit better about this. So let's see, stay focused says, where's the account number? Merle, no account number. John says available credit reported balance are different. So let's talk about that for a second. So you could have a balance that's more than or less than the available credit. Available credit's just saying you've got $4,200 of credit. You might use $100, or it might, run it up to $10,000. So I think that would be okay. But the account numbers are missing. Okay. And then Merle points out, how do you have available credit if it's a charge-off? So notice here, it tells us it's a charge-off and we have available credit. So can I go charge money on this charged off account? Does my credit card still work if it's charged off? Not any that I know of. And so it kind of raises a question about this ratio here. And certainly the account number, why is that missing? Okay, we need that. So I've redacted, anything that could be sort of personal, but I did not take out the account number. It's just blank here. So just in this first section, we're identifying, hey, where's the account number? How do you have available credit? If it's a charged off account, maybe why do you have this debt to credit ratio? And the way I like to dispute is ask questions. Why do you say I have available credit if it's a charged off account? I thought I have no available credit if it's charged off. Can you explain this to me? And now let's look at the account history. And every bureau calls sections a little bit different. So this is just Equifax. Account history, and it's going to show us balance, available credit, schedule payment. Let's see if I can get, I think I got all that on the screen. So look through the balance, available credit, schedule payment, and let's identify the errors. What do you see that may potentially be wrong? Either it's inaccurate or incomplete about balance, available credit, and schedule payment. So Merle says 2019 balances are empty. There's no data there. Okay. And just there's a lot of blanks here. John asked, why is the reason they leave off the account number? It's really something, John, that they know is wrong, and Equifax just does it on these what are called consumer disclosures. I mean, I call them credit reports. That's what everybody calls them, but technically it's a consumer disclosure. They have to tell you everything in your file. They don't tell you what the account number is. They just don't do it. And so let's see, we got blank on schedule payments. So look at this balance here. And just so you know, this credit report was pulled in about November, December of last year, of 2021. So where's the balance for 21? Where's the balance for 20? Now they say that this is up to 2 years. So we say, well, we'll give you a pass on the rest of 2019, but how about 2020? How about 2021? Where's the balance? And remember, this says we have available credit of $4,200. There's nothing here. If it's true that we have $4,200, why doesn't it say that in the available credit? And then for schedule payment, Yeah, there's no scheduled payment for August of 2020. There's none for 21. Now, I'll say this, if it's charged off, you really should not have a scheduled payment. But the flip side is if it's charged off, you don't have a credit limit either. And so they kind of have to choose here. But we can just see all this stuff is missing. Now look at the actual payment, and I'm going to kind of scroll so you can see it because it splits it on the page here. So what do you see about the actual payment? Yeah, what Flurry says, there's nothing reporting. Now, it may be that we made no payments, okay? Now, it'd be better if they, noted that there just were no payments made, but they've left it blank. Now, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe that means we made no payments, okay? So hold that thought. Don't lose that thought. Hold that thought. And see, Murley says scheduled payment always should be higher than the previous month. Well, I'll say this. On a credit card, your scheduled payment would depend on the balance. So if you're not paying, you would expect it to go up. But if you made a big payment, your scheduled payment might come down. And so let's look at the high credit. So we've got high credit, credit limit, amount past due. So what do you see about those three sections? What maybe looks wrong or looks incomplete to you? Yeah, Florida just says incomplete, right? I mean, we're missing all of 21. What happened to the rest of 20? Credit limit. See, it's saying we have a credit limit here, and so that says 4,200. Well, if we go back up here, it talks about available credit. Well, available credit technically would be your credit limit minus the balance, right? Hey, I've got $300 available credit. But to know what that is, you would have to know what the credit limit is minus the balance. So when they don't give us the balance, how do we know what the available credit is? Okay. Let's see. George says the amounts are different. So, we've got the high credit here. And so is that saying that that's the highest the balance ever got? Well, we got past due down here of 4770. We've got 4109 up here. We've got this credit limit of 4,200. So you see all these missing pieces of information. And right now, and this is what I want us to do in this particular webinar, is I don't want us to look outside, okay? I want you to be able to look at a credit report. You don't have to look at anything outside that credit report. You don't even have to look at the other credit reports. Just one credit report. We're just looking at Equifax. What can we see is just wrong, okay? And so you're pointing out all these missing things. John said, do they typically come back, fill in the blanks once you request them? Or if it's not there now, is it hard for them to fill them in? Sometimes they'll just say, well, we're not going to report any of this history, which is not really a good solution to it. But a lot of times they just leave the blanks there because they don't have it. And either the furniture's not provided it or the Bureau is refusing to take the information they have and actually plug it in to these details here. So let's see. Ryan says the past due amount of $47.70 for January 2020 is more than the total balance reported. Okay, so let's look at that. We've got $47.70 for January. So what was the balance in January of 2020? $27.38. It's kind of weird, isn't it? Like, how do you have a balance of that and yet you have a past due amount? Are we looking at that right? Yeah, January 2020, past due, $47.7. How is that even possible? How can you be more past due than the actual balance? Okay, so very good, Ryan, very good. Now, this activity designator, this is something that really only Equifax does. And sometimes it's in there, sometimes in these comments. But I want you to look at this, January 2020. So sort of, hold this thought. January 2020, charged off account. Pretty simple, right? I mean, you don't have to be some credit expert to look at that and go, well, evidently it was a charged off account January 2020. So let's see if that is true. So let's look at, and you can see here, January 2020, previously in dispute, now resolved. So remember, January 2020 charged off. So here's the payment history, the grid, the chart. So what does January 2020 say? Does it say charged off, or what does it say? Remember up here, they say that it was charged off. Yeah. John says paid on time. That's right. So we've got this little check mark, January 2020. We say, well, I may not understand everything in the world about everything, or even everything about credit reports, but I'm pretty sure a green check mark, if I just go down here, paid on time. If I'm paid on time, how is it a charge off the same month? Does that make any sense? So again, we're not going outside the credit bureau. We're just looking within the credit bureau, within sort of the four corners of this document, and saying, guys, there are so many errors here. So let's look at, and Ryan points out the payment history says current for January 2020, but remember that past due amount. And so he's absolutely right about that. We come back up here and we say past due $4,700 in January. And then it says, oh, by the way, you were paid on time. So now it's possible the on time is incorrect. It's possible the 4770 is incorrect. It's possible they're both incorrect. But you know what is impossible is for them to both be correct. You cannot be on time and 4770 past due. Okay. So let me give you a little tip when you look at these payment history grids. You always want to just let your eyes wander over it. You do have to be careful because sometimes, depending on the way the report's laid out, time may go this way or it may go this way. So here we have, it goes January, February, March, April from left to right. So that makes sense. That's sort of how our eyes would typically read. But you want to look when it says that we start getting late. Does it go from current to 90 days? Or we have some of these where it'll say 30 days and then the next one says 120. And you're like, man, maybe I slept through that in school, but I don't remember any month having 90 days. I don't know how you get from 30 to 120. Now, just looking at this, it looks fine. 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, 180. And remember, for our purposes today, we're not looking outside. We're not saying, well, can we prove, because we've got a check or we've got a letter acknowledging payment, that, for example, October we paid on time. We're not talking about anything outside the report, just within the four walls of this report here. So what strikes you about this payment history that maybe is incorrect or inaccurate, incomplete? Let's see. Murley says 2018, no data available except the last 3 months. That's right. It's missing the data. Were we current? Were we late? I don't know. And, if we have any questions, we say, well, what are these little, I don't even know what you call that, like little crosshatch or whatever. I'm sure there's some fancy word for it. But anyway, whatever it is, it says no data available. So the Bureau, Equifax, is saying, guys, we don't have any of this data. We have no earthly idea from January to September 2018 what's happening. Now, depending on when this report was pulled, maybe we should have data for November of 21, or maybe we should not, but we can kind of check as we go down here. So let's see. Matthew says you can pay on time, but not the full amount. That's right. So we can have a balance when there's a green check mark. We can certainly, pay less than the full balance. And so we can carry a balance, but we would not have a past due, or it would be very, very unusual to have a past due. Yeah, and Flores says maybe the account wasn't open before October, and I've redacted out the date open just for privacy purposes. This was open before, September 2018. So now let's look at the account details. So we're kind of walking our way methodically through the account, and just each section kind of looking at it and saying, Does anything look inconsistent, inaccurate, incomplete? We make a note of it. So what do you see in this account details that sort of raise a question in your mind? Maybe it's accurate, maybe it's inaccurate, maybe it's incomplete. But what do you think about this? Just looking at this account details. Okay, John says data first delinquency. So that is down here at the very bottom left, September 1st, 2020. Now, only Equifax out of the big three actually gives us the data first delinquency. So here's a tip. When you see the data first delinquency, go back to the payment history and check and say, does that look correct? So data first delinquency in very simple terms, and it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's the date that you first became delinquent, okay? It's not the second time you became delinquent, but it's when you first became delinquent and you never recovered from that. So we're not talking about, I got 30 days late, then I caught it up the next month. That's not a date of first delinquency. It's when we go delinquent and we never recover from that. So September 2020. Well, let's look back up here. Find 2020 September. Isn't that a little bit odd? It says we paid on time in September. So, we don't have to be an expert on everything. And I'll say this as a little side note. A lot of times people talk about Metro 2. And, there's a Facebook group. I put up a Metro 2 manual from 2020. It certainly has some value, okay? But people sometimes act like it's some, mystical thing that's, the secret to all credit report issues. It's not, okay? It's not the law. It's an industry standard, but that doesn't change what the law is. But you don't have to be an expert on Metro 2 to say, September 2020, paid on time. September 2020, first delinquency. That seems wrong. Now, maybe we were not on time in September. Well, then that payment history is wrong. Or maybe we were on time. Well, then this date of first delinquency is wrong. If the date of first delinquency is really October, well, then they have it wrong. Okay. So now they could argue, well, it actually helps you to put it too soon. Well, remember what the FCRA says. We can dispute any item of information that is incomplete or inaccurate. And so I've used this argument before when they say, well, if we remove that, it would actually hurt your credit score. Well, that's not the question. The question is, if I have, for example, identity theft, and I have accounts on my credit reports that are being paid, I can still dispute them, even though they may be positive for me. If they're not mine, they're inaccurate. Get them off my credit report. So we can identify all the errors. Now, whether we choose to dispute them all, whether we choose to sue, that's a different question. Right now, we're just trying to identify every possible error and then sort of put those in the letter. And then we can always say, well, I'll take this one out or leave this one out. But that's an issue right there. Let's see what else we've got. Darlene says credit limit's 4,200, amount past due is 4,770. And so that comes from right here. We've got credit limit 4,200, balance 4,770, amount past due 4,770. You could have, Darlene, a higher balance in the credit limit. If you stop paying and then you add on late fees and charges and interest, your balance could exceed the credit limit, okay? Or you could have them equal and then they lower your credit limit. Now suddenly your balance is higher than your credit limit. So I think that is conceivably okay, all right? But we're definitely good to be looking at all this and comparing and saying, well, what makes sense? What doesn't make sense? Let's see. Flurry says the limit, balance, amount due is wrong. So it certainly doesn't fit with what we see kind of up top because we're missing a lot of data there. Let's see. Elisa, first delinquency jumped out at me. Delinquency first reported. Flurry says data last payment. So let's look at this. Data last payment, August 1st, 2020. Yeah, I know we've been looking at a lot of numbers and so you may not remember this, but let's go back up here. So keep that in mind, August 1st, 2020. So let's see, is that reflected up here? So we got actual payment. Remember, it splits it, so you got to look at the next page. They have nothing. They certainly don't have anything for August 2020. So if we did make a payment in August 2020, it should be right here. If we did not make a payment in August 2020, then what does that make this? Makes that inaccurate. But even beyond that, they say we made a payment. So let's just take them at their word. We made a payment August 1st, 2020. Type into the chat how much that payment was. Just looking at the screen, type in how much the payment was August 1st, 2020. So John says 0. Darlene says unknown. Tony says incomplete. Yeah, look, see, here's data last payment. All you do is your eyes go to the left. Amount or actual payment amount, it's blank. What was it? Well, if they don't know what the amount was, how do they know we made a payment that month? And that might explain why up top there's no dollar amount, because they don't know. But they're just reporting, oh yeah, surely you made a payment August 2020, but we don't know what the amount is. Well, if you don't know what the amount, how do you know we actually made a payment? So that's something you could dispute. Okay. Hey, up here you say nothing. Down here you say August 2020, but you don't even give the amount. Like none of this fits. How do you explain this, Equifax? And just put it on the credit bureau. Explain to me how this happened. And that can be a very powerful tool there. So look at creditor classification. Unknown. My question is, why don't you know it? Why don't you know? And I'll just tell you, I happen to know what this creditor, it's a very common, all of you would recognize the name. What do you mean it's unknown, the creditor classification? We've got, let's see here, data last activity. A lot of confusion about what that means. It literally means what it says. It's the date the last activity occurred. Okay. Some people say that's the date of first delinquency. Where that comes in part is with credit monitoring. Sometimes the date of first delinquency gets sort of mapped to the field of data last activity. That's why we don't use credit monitoring. I mean, it's fine to use it just for your own personal reasons, but I would never dispute based on credit monitoring. Trust me, because, and Blaine can tell you the same thing, Blaine Dixon, who's on this webinar. If we go sue and we end up in federal court and we're saying, Judge, here's what Equifax reported. Well, how do you know? Well, I've got this smart credit. I got this identity IQ. I mean, that is a painful experience because that ain't Equifax. That's what somebody says Equifax says about it. And a lot of times that's pulled from one bureau. So, smart credit is pulling from TransUnion. So think about it this way. Smart credit is saying, here's what Equifax says. Well, how do you know that? Because TransUnion told us. Well, how does TransUnion know what Equifax says? Well, because they say Equifax told them. So it's like these double layers here. The point is, if you want to do real disputes on your credit reports, if you want to find all the actual errors, don't mess with credit monitoring. Get your real reports. Nowhere will you find this data. Okay, so what about myfico.com? That's a fabulous product. If you really want to know what your FICO scores are. But don't rely on that to do your disputes. Pull your real reports to look at this and find the errors. Let's see here. Let me go back to my comments here. Frank says, my concern is if dispute an old account that is negative from 16-17, charge off with zero balance, the dispute comes back verified, not deleted. They change the last update date. Will that drop my score? The short answer is, Frank, I am not a scoring expert. I know a lot about it because I've been suing credit bureaus for 20 years. But I don't make any claim to being a scoring expert. The other thing is there are literally dozens of scoring models, okay? So when somebody says, well, here's my credit score, it's like, which one? There's like 36 different scores that you can have. So they all treat things a little bit different. Here's my view on it. For my clients, I will only dispute things that my client is comfortable having fixed or deleted. Okay. So if they delete it, we have to be happy with that. So sometimes there's a negative account with errors, but really the negative thing is like from 4 years ago. And we say overall, this is a positive account, even though it may be listed as negative. So we don't want to take the chance of deleting that, because when you do disputes this way, very detailed, and point out all these errors, you increase your chance of them deleting the account. Now, from my standpoint, and just so you understand sort of how I've done business for 20 years doing this, we don't charge people any money to help them dispute things on their credit reports. If it gets fixed, I make no money. If it gets deleted, I make no money. I have a happy client, but I don't make any money. When they don't fix it, they don't delete it, then we talk with our client about, hey, do you want to sue? Okay. And so at that point, I'm not particularly concerned with, well, would this have made a 5-point difference in my score necessarily? Because when we sue the bad guys, they either fix it or delete it, whatever we want, if they want to settle, and they pay my client money and they pay me money. So that's my view on it. You do have to think about, are you comfortable disputing this? Because there's always a chance that they'll fix it, and that may have some impact on your score, positive or negative. But generally, they're going to, if you identify all these errors, they're going to delete it, or they're not going to completely fix it. And then you may have the ability to sue. All right, let me see what else we got here. Elisa says, maybe jumping the gun, will you provide how to dispute this kind of account and to whom? Creditor classification. So with the creditor classification, I always just say, why is that unknown? Kind of like, why do you not have the account number? Tell me what it is. Okay, you should know this. If you're reporting on me and I have no choice on whether Equifax keeps a credit report, I have no choice that they're reporting this Capital One or Synchrony or whatever this is, then you should know what creditor it is, what classification. Now, as far as how you dispute this, you just take all these errors and you put it into a letter and you just explain it. And I'm not going to talk much about how to actually do the dispute letter. I'll just say this: there is no magic dispute letter. Don't pay money to get a template. It literally is, here's the account. You put all the information about it. I like to just copy and paste from the PDF. Here's the name, here's the account number, the date open, the balance, the status. And then you just start typing, hey, I see lots of errors on here. For example, why do you not have an account number? What about the payment history? And just, there's no magic way to do it. You just point out specifics. Here's where I see people go wrong. They're like, I learned somewhere online that it's not supposed to be more than 2 pages. Well, I've got somebody that sent a 43-page dispute letter. It's okay. It can be as long as it needs to be. It can be as short as it needs to be. Just identify the errors. You want the judge reading your letter, okay? Because again, my perspective, I don't do credit repair. What I do is help people dispute errors. And if it doesn't get fixed, then we sue. And then I'm standing in front of a judge. I want that judge reading the letter going, well, Equifax, they point out it says September 2020 was the date of first delinquency. And up here, September 2020 says it was on time and you didn't change that. So how can both be true? Well, judge, I mean, it doesn't really matter. And, blah, blah, and they start mumbling. Okay. So we want the judge to see the letter, which is sort of like your central exhibit to the lawsuit. Okay. And so this letter is really where the work needs to be done. And so there's no magic way to do it. You just like you were talking to them, hey, how can I have a date of first delinquency, September 1st, 2020, when you say September 2020, I was current? I don't understand. How can both of those be true? Well, now you've raised the issue and they have to investigate it. Let's see. Murley says, if they don't fix, would you sue both credit reporting agencies and the furnishers or just the bureaus? John says, I'd say both. Yeah, I'm with John on that. We typically, not always, but almost always, we sue both. Okay. Sometimes there are reasons not to. We may have an arbitration claim. There may be a strategic reason to only sue the bureaus, and maybe we go to arbitration with the furnisher. So there gets to be some sort of advanced level strategy, but just as a general rule, the credit bureau is responsible for this and the furnisher is. Okay. Now, it might be the furnisher says, we gave all that information to Equifax and they just messed it up. Okay. Well, give me the testimony under oath, point the finger at Equifax, testify against them, and then maybe we can see about getting you out of this lawsuit. And you'll be our star witness against Equifax. And usually the lawyers come back to me and go, well, John, that seems a little excessive. We don't really want to get crossways with the credit bureaus. How do we work this thing out? I'm like, okay. So did they really supply all the info? I don't know. And ultimately, it doesn't matter to my client. We don't care who pays the money. We just want the money paid and the account fixed or deleted. All right. So let's see here. We've got Alicia. It's on these credit monitoring agencies. Where are they getting the credit information? So a lot of times they get it from one bureau. I don't know where Identity IQ gets it from. Smart Credit gets it from TransUnion. I honestly, I don't keep up with them because for my purposes, they're no good. Okay. I'm just being blunt. I'm not saying they can't be helpful just as you sort of manage your financial situation, but for disputing and suing, we would never go into a lawsuit with, waiving a credit monitoring. Here's my Credit Karma. And besides that, it doesn't have all this information. If you look at it, it's missing all this information. When I say missing, it's just not even there. We can't tell if it's incomplete or inaccurate. It's just not there. So if we really want to dispute our credit reports, in my view, we have to use these real reports here because that's what gives us the most data, which gives us the most opportunities to point out the errors here. So Darlene says, being sued by Midland Credit Management, can they legally put their collection efforts on the credit report before they win or lose the case? Yeah, as long as it's accurate. Now, if they lose the case, I'm not talking about a dismissal without prejudice, but dismissal with prejudice or judgment in your favor, then they better not have it on your credit report. And we've been suing Midland and the credit bureaus for that for probably 15 years. Where they lose their collection case and then they continue to report. So that's a problem for them. Andre says, what do we do if original creditor provided false info to the CRAs and the original creditor and the CRAs won't investigate or delete the false info? Well, if you can show it's false and you dispute it, the credit bureaus have an obligation to investigate. And if they do a lousy investigation, you sue the credit bureaus. And the furnisher, assuming the credit bureaus notify the furnisher, have an obligation to investigate. They do a lousy investigation, you sue them. Sometimes you don't know exactly what happened sort of, behind closed doors. So you sue both of them and you say, I'm going to let you guys shoot each other here. I'm just saying both of you or one of you is at fault, but at least one, probably both of you. So if you have false information, you properly disputed it, you've identified all the errors, it doesn't get fixed, then I would certainly look at, can you sue these people? Let's see, LJ says, based on everything said, I think I have a case. Spoke to you earlier on YouTube about the credit bureaus refusing to delete a fraudulent account. Sent them a copy of the letter. Yeah, Andre, just get with me, after the webinar, just reach out. You can take the email that gave you the link to this webinar and just reply to that. And I'm happy to help you any way I can. Flurry says, can I make such letter personal? Devastated collections placed on my file cost me 97 points. No negative stuff for 30. Yeah. I would put all the, hey, I'm trying to buy a house, or I have a security clearance review coming up in 6 months. I have to have this false information off my report. Definitely put whatever is true that would be persuasive to the credit bureaus or a reasonable person if they were actually reading it, where they go, oh man, this person's going to lose their mortgage. Maybe you've been through a divorce and you have a deadline to refinance the house just to get it in your name. Look, guys, I got this court order. Give them the court order. It says, I've got till June of 2022 to refinance this. I can't do it. Here's the turn down letter from my mortgage broker because, these two accounts are on here and they're full of errors and I want them all. Okay. So yeah, put in anything that would be helpful. George says, dispute all errors or just one and hope it's deleted or corrected. So let me just answer that. My view is you put all the errors in. Okay. I don't hold anything back. I just put all the errors we can identify, put in the letter, and see what happens. And it gets fixed, it gets deleted, or we sue. Okay. Second question is, do you recommend sending the report to the credit bureaus to show the errors? That can be a very effective strategy to go through and sort of circle it, with like some PDF program, or print out and, physically circle it and scan it in, or if you have an iPad, you have a little pen or something. So that can be very effective to show them. So you're telling them, you're also showing them. I would still be very, very descriptive in my letter itself. Okay. Like, I wouldn't just say the account history is messed up. See the stuff circled that's enclosed. I would say the account history is messed up. See what I've circled. And for example, here are all the ones that are messed up, and then I would list them out. Okay. Let's see. Alicia says makes a lot of sense on credit monitoring and making money hand over fist. Yeah, and I don't mean to sort of paint them as the devil or something. They're not. It's just the purpose of credit monitoring is not to know what's on your credit reports. It's to sort of get a quick update, like Credit Karma, they give you an alert. Hey, a new account just got added, or a new account just deleted. Hey, that's helpful. So I'm not saying like don't use them, but use them for the right tool. Okay. We wouldn't take a convertible sports car and say, that's what I'm going to, tow a big trailer of horses with. Right. And we wouldn't say some big, diesel truck. That's what I'm going to, I don't know, do a mountain race with or something. So we use the right tool for the right purpose here. And the right tool for figuring out errors on your credit reports are your real credit reports. Let's see. Patricia says a collection account. One bureau says open, one says close. I would just ask them, what's the significance of that? Hey, so let's say it's Midland. TransUnion, you say it's open. Equifax, you say it's closed. Which one is it? Okay. Let's see here. The last one, and then we'll go to the next report. John says, statute of limitations, 6 years, creditor can no longer collect. Do they still report to the credit bureaus for 7 years, even if they can no longer collect? So the answer is yes. There are different time periods. So there's the time period to sue. That's your statute of limitation. And then there's the time period to credit report. Those are really unrelated to each other. Okay. So some states have a 3-year statute of limitation, but they can still report for the full 7 years. Now it's 7 years from the date of first delinquency. Okay. So Andre says, can you sue these bureaus even if I'm in Oklahoma? Well, I'll say this, Andre, and you're very kind with your words. I do work with a couple lawyers in Oklahoma, so we can certainly take a look at your situation. And okay, so let's switch now to Experian. And actually, let me go back to this mortgage one. Do you see why I said, while this is helpful if you're in the lending business, it's not very helpful to us trying to dispute things because we're missing so much data here. So we really want these real reports to get all the data here. So let's look at Experian now. Okay, so here's Experian, and this is, by the way, a separate account. This is not the same account as we looked at before. So the way Experian does it, it's going to give us sort of the general history or a general overview, and then we're going to get the payment history, what's called payment history guide, balance histories, and sometimes there's comments. So let's just look at this and tell me what you see. Don't, ignore anything that's redacted. Just tell me what you see where you go, I'm not sure that that's accurate, or that raises a question for me. So just take a look at that. So Merle says, there's no recent payment amount. So let's You can see my little cursor here. Recent payment, 0. I'm not sure how you have a recent payment of 0. Okay. Like I'm going to tell my landlord or my mortgage company, hey, I paid you 0. So we're good on the rent, right? I'm not sure that quite works. Let's see, monthly payment, 0. Now I'll say this about the monthly payment. This is a charged off account. So typically with a charged off account, you don't have a monthly payment or scheduled payment. But remember, that's sort of the flip side of you don't have a credit limit either, because you can't use that card. You can't charge on it. And it's not that you have a monthly payment, it's really the whole thing is due. Okay. So Andre says, when was the date open? Yeah, I actually redacted that. So it does list that. I just did that for privacy purposes, but good eye on that. Let's see, Tony, recent payment, monthly payments inaccurate. Yeah, again, on the monthly payment, I think it's okay, but recent payment's a problem. Account status should be open or closed. Let me see. Yeah, so the status here, and here's the thing, keep in mind, all these bureaus use sometimes the same language in a little different format. So with status here, Experian is using this for, is it charged off? Is it paid, never late? Is it current? What's the situation? So they don't use this as, is it open or closed? Now, some of the others do. Let's see, Derek says status date versus status updated. So the status updated is just saying, well, here's when it was last updated. Now, I think what Derek's talking about, and this is, very good to see this, is it's telling us there's a past due amount as of September. Well, how did they know in March what that would be? I think their response would be, well, it's charged off. That's what we're talking about. But hey, that's a legitimate thing to raise. Like, you say the status was updated in March of 21, but yet in the status itself, you're talking about September 21. So that's a good thing. Okay, Andre, recent payment missing. Yeah. Terms are listed as NA. Okay. So now, generally their response to this would be, this is a credit card, it's charged off. So there are no terms. By terms, I mean, like, is this a 60 month car loan? Is this a 360 month mortgage loan? Okay. Notice this, on record until. So they're telling us when it will come off, but what is missing? What are they not telling us here? So they say, here's when it will come off, but what are we supposed to get? So remember what Equifax showed us. So Equifax showed us the date of first delinquency. That literally is the date we first went delinquent and never recovered from. So they don't give us that. They just say, trust us. Here's when this will come off. That's not what the law says they're supposed to give us. Okay. So that's something we can challenge and say, why are you not giving us the actual date of first delinquency? And when we get to TransUnion, we'll see it says the estimated date. What do you mean estimated? Like, the law is very clear, date of first delinquency, certain time period, that's when it comes off. Okay. Let's see, George says last payment date. Yeah, so this doesn't give us a date. Now, they don't have a field on here, but we can look a little bit further, and sometimes we can get more information about the date. Derek says Experian never lists the actual date. So sometimes they do. It depends on sort of the format of the report. Sometimes they give, like a day of the month. Other times it's just the month here. And we'll see that even in this report. So, and Andre talks about the dates past due. So let's go a little bit further. So here's the payment history. So this is similar to, let me flip back to our Equifax. You see this chart? It's similar to this, okay? Now, again, these are two totally different accounts, no relationship. So I want you to look at this, and let me see if I can sort of squeeze it all in here. So I want you to look at this chart and then this guide down here. And you can look at these individually and then together. Tell me what problems or issues do you see with this payment history? So, they call it payment history, and this payment history guide. So let's see, Andre, are they missing? Yeah, there are some things missing here. 120 date past due is missing. Presumably that would be January of 21, but it doesn't list it, does it? Derek says no 120 day late. January 2021 is incomplete. What else do you see that would be a problem in your mind? Yeah, there's missing information. Fleury mentions Murley can't calculate the exact balance. Well, we'll look at kind of the balance below. There's no charge off in May or August of 21. Yeah, now we presume these would be charge offs, but we don't know. There's no data there. And remember, this report was pulled. Well, let me just back up. They say the balance was updated in September of 21. Okay. So even if we say, well, there shouldn't be anything for October, November, December, okay, that may or may not be true, but there's no August, there's no May, there's no January, okay? Even in 2018, there's stuff missing. Now, here's what I want you to look at. And this is a little more subtle, but if we're really trying to look at these in depth, then we want to compare as much information as possible. So look at this history guide, charge off as of September 2021. So let's see, is that true? Well, September 2021 charge off. Okay, that's true. Again, we're not looking outside the report to see, were we really charged off? We're just saying, let's look at the report and see within the four walls of it, what's happened. And then it says it was a charge off from April of 21 to August of 21. So let's see. April 21. Yeah, that's true. Oh, wait, May. So they don't put any data here, but they say down here, May is a charge off. There's no data in August, but yet they say August 21 is a charge off. Now look at this. 150 days past due as of March of 21. So let's go down. March of 21. Does it say 150 days? Looks like a charge off to me. February, 120 days late. February, 150 days late. Which one's true? Maybe this one, maybe that one, maybe both of them are wrong. But they can't both be right. I can't be 150 days late in March of 21 and charge off in March of 21. I can't be 120 days late in February and 150 days late in February. It's, which one is it here? And so, that it doesn't always have these discrepancies, but maybe a third of the time, if you look, you'll find that these things don't match. So you put that in your letter. Hey, you said in here that February I was 150 days late on your payment history, but in the payment history guide, you say I was 120. And here, it's at the very bottom here. I'm trying to keep this toward the dates here. Look at this, 90 days past due as of January. Really? How do they know that's true when it's not even in their chart? Okay. So we get to just put all, look, it may take you 2 paragraphs. I don't want to spend a lot of time. Well, spend all the paper you need. Okay. We're not trying to send short letters. We're trying to send comprehensive letters that explain all the errors here. Okay. And so let's see here. Now we get the balance histories. Okay. So again, we're not looking outside the report. We're not saying, is it really $22.97? We've got some scheduled payments here. We've got 0 paid on September the 3rd. So see, sometimes they do put the day of the month, 2020. Well, how is that 0? And this says down here, 0 paid on September the 4th. And then the next month it's 0 paid on September 3rd. What's going on here? See, these are questions we can ask the Bureau. Hey, which day was I supposedly making a payment on, and how is it 0? Okay. Now, sometimes what you'll notice, and you don't see it here, but you'll see the balance going down, and they'll still say 0 paid. Well, how's the balance going down if I'm paying zero? So we just look at this to find, all the inconsistencies. All right, let's see. Alicia says, so John, when we send in these errors, is our final requested resolution to have this account or others we find errors removed from our credit reports? So a lot of people do that. They say, because there are these errors, I demand that you delete these. That's not actually what the law says. Now, it's not like terrible to put that. It's more accurate to say, I want you to fix all these errors on this account or delete the whole account. So you're giving them a chance, like do the right thing. If you can fix this, fix it. Like I don't mind having accurate and complete information on my credit report. What I do mind is having inaccurate and or incomplete information on my credit report. If you're going to have inaccurate or incomplete or even both of them, then get it off my credit report. Get the account off. So that's the way I suggest wording it. Fix all these errors or delete the whole account. Okay. Let's see. All right. So let's look at TransUnion. Okay, Derek says, thank you, John. Outstanding class. Have to go. Hey, good to see you, Derek. It was good to talk to you the other day. Yeah, just connect with me later on. And you should get a replay link if you want to get the final part of this. So feel free to watch that. So now let's look at this TransUnion report here. And again, you'll notice it's a different structure. Every one of these reports looks different. Part of what credit monitoring does is says, well, let's put all the data in there in sort of a uniform way so you can just look at all three bureaus at once. That's convenient, but what they're doing is sometimes sort of putting a round object in a square hole or whatever the expression is. And so it's inaccurate. Plus, they're not getting the real data. Okay. If we want to know what Equifax says, we go to Equifax. We want to know what Experian says, we go to Experian. Want to know what TransUnion says, we go to TransUnion. So let's look at TransUnion now. So the format of this is you have the sort of general information, then you have the payment history, and you'll notice here they put it all together. Okay. So this is known as the trended data because we want to know not just what the balance is now, but what has the balance been. Okay. So if Blaine's still on here, I'll use him as an example. Let's say he and I both have an American Express card and we both have $10,000 on it. But 6 months ago, he had $50,000 on his American Express. And now it's gone all the way down to 10. 2 months ago, I had zero on my American Express. And now it's gone all the way up to 10,000. Who would you rather loan money to? Well, probably Blaine, because he's moving in the right direction. I'm moving in the wrong direction. Okay. So TransUnion is, to me, the easiest report to read. Okay. So we have this. They just go through all the years. So let's again start kind of one section at a time. Just looking at what's on the screen, what jumps out at you as potentially a problem here? Okay. Now maybe we need to scroll a little bit further down to know for certain, but what do you see as potential errors on just what we see on the screen? Yeah, so John sort of grabs hold of this thing right away. Estimated month and year, this will be removed. That is not the date of first delinquency. Okay. And so why is it estimated? Are they like, we don't really know, this is like horseshoes and hand grenades, or like, why don't we know exactly, when it will come off? Why don't they tell us the date of first delinquency? Let's see. Alicia says it's closed on November of 2020. So that's what it says, but paid on October of 21. So if we look at the status, it was a charge off. So when it's charged off, it's typically closed. And so it could be closed and then later on we end up paying it. So this is saying that it was a charge off, but now it's been paid in full. And here's when it was paid, October of 21. Let's see. Flurry says payment status. Yeah. So, again, we're just assuming that's correct. Okay, so we're not going outside the report. We're just saying, all right, you tell me, TransUnion, this was paid in full and it was a charge off. So now I know that. All right. So Elise says, so does the date paid start 7 years over? No, it's from the date of first delinquency. If you pay it off, that doesn't change the fact. So look at this. It says it's a charge off. Now we don't know when it was a charge off just by looking at this one screen. But notice there's a credit limit. And it was 12,000, then it was 14, then it was 8,080, now 7,410 from October 2020 to November 21. That's when we paid it off. Do we really have a credit limit when this thing was charged off? Because we know it was closed in 2020 and it was a charge off. And then we're given this high balance here. Okay. So the high balance is not the credit limit. High balance is literally how high did your balance get? Okay. So now let's look at the payment history here. And so now we can start to get a little bit more detail. So we can see this thing became charged off in March of 21. So how do we have a credit limit when it was charged off? CBG means canceled by grantor. And on the TransUnion report, it's actually very nice. They give you like 2 or 3 pages of codes that will explain what all these, little 3-letter words mean here. So that's canceled by grantor. PRL is profit loss write-off. So we'd say, well, how do we have a credit limit? But just looking at this, well, actually, let me leave this kind of like it is. So I want you to notice this date paid, October of 21. So if we paid this in October of 21, and remember it says paid in full, it doesn't literally mean you paid every dollar. It means you paid enough so that you don't owe any more after that, okay? So if we paid it in October, what would we expect the October payment history to show if we paid it off in October? What do you think about that? So what would you expect October to show? Or what about October or November strikes you as sort of odd if we paid this thing off in October? Yeah, so Lisa says payment amount and it should show a 0 balance. So sometimes with TransUnion in this trended data, they will have more fields, more places for data, and it will say the amount paid. Now this doesn't show that, okay? But Alicia's right, I think, and Flori's right. The amount, if we paid it off in October, how much do we owe in October? We owe 0. If I paid it off in October, I owe 0 in October. And remember, they're sort of putting in the month sort of after the fact, okay? Because it might be reported on, say, October 15, but if you pay it on the 16th, then when November rolls around, they'll sort of update October to say, well, hey, you paid this thing off, okay? So I think it should show a 0 balance in October. Now, if we owe 0 in October, can we be late in October? Can we be charge off? And then think about November. How are we a charge off if we owe 0? If we owed 0 as of October, and remember, if we go back up here, it says this thing was paid in full, and that's the last payment date, and that should be enough, but then it even tells us here's the date paid. So we know as of October 19, 2021, it was paid in full. So how on November do I have a charge off? Now the 0 balance, I mean, that's correct. I owe 0, okay? But why do I have a charge off in a month that owes 0? But let me ask you guys this question. Can I be 30 days late to you if I owe you 0? You say, John Watts is 30 days late. Well, how much does he owe you? Nothing. Does that remotely sound accurate? Does that seem reasonable? Does that seem possible? It doesn't. I can't owe you. If I owe you nothing, I can't be late. I can't be late on nothing. Okay. Probably my English teacher wouldn't like that, but you know what I'm trying to say. So how in the world do I have a charge off in November when I paid this thing off in October? That seems like a really good question to ask TransUnion. And for October, you can see they lowered the balance, because remember, we paid it in October. All they did is they subtracted. So evidently we paid what? $4,215, if my math is right. But that $4,215, that was paid in full. So now we owe zero in October. We don't owe $3,570. We're not a charge off in October, certainly not a charge off in December. We paid it off in October. And so, see, again, we're not going outside the credit report. And I'm not discouraging. You should go outside the credit report. You know, you might say, well, here's my check, or here's the letter from this company saying you paid us off in October of 21. But even without that, just within the confines of this credit report, we're going, this just doesn't make sense. There's no way this can be accurate here. Now, the schedule payment, okay, it's missing. But again, on a charge off, we really don't have a schedule payment because it's all due. The flip side is you don't have a credit limit. But yet they say, oh, you got a credit limit. Even into November, you have a credit limit. Oh, you don't. You don't have a credit limit. That one's charged off. So what about, we'll just take 2019. What jumps out at you for 2019? Yeah, Flurry says no reporting, right? January to May, what's my balance? What's my past due? What's my schedule payment? What are my remarks? What's my rating? And look, that's all current. I mean, it says we're okay, but we don't know. What's the balance? I have no idea. Okay. Now, again, when I say like not looking outside, I would have a question about this. How do we go from $11 to $6,300? I mean, certainly it's possible, but for our purposes, we're not even doing that. We're just saying we're just taking the credit report as it shows here. Where's this data here? Okay. And then 2018, you know, where's the data? Where's the data? 17, 16. Okay. So, you know, they're just missing all that data. So my suggestion to you is you go through credit reports, look for things that are missing. Look for things that just don't make sense. Remember, going back to our Equifax example, it says, what was it, September of 20, it says we're current. And down here, September 20, we're delinquent. That doesn't make sense. You know, what about TransUnion or Experian? Remember, we had some discrepancies here. Yeah, that says 150 days late, but this says 120 days late for February. Well, which one is it? Okay. Same thing with TransUnion here. You know, how are we late when we owe zero and it was paid off in October? How am I late in November if it was paid off in October? So look for those things that just don't make sense. Look for the missing information. And again, you raise these as questions to the Bureau. Sometimes people say, well, I have to know the answer to it. I mean, it helps. It's good. But don't let that stop you from raising a question. I mean, you may say, I don't know why they're not reporting from January to May of 2019. Well, it's okay if you don't know. Ask. Guys, why aren't you reporting from January to May of 2019? Where's my balance, my past due, my scheduled payment, my remarks? You report the rating. Evidently, you claim you know something here. Where's the rest of it? Well, why don't they have anything in 2018? I don't know. Ask them. So questions are very powerful. Remember this. I don't mean to, get philosophical, but really the only way to think is to ask questions. Okay. First time I heard that from Tony Robbins. I was probably 20 years old. He goes, you cannot think without asking questions. I remember I literally in my brain said, is that right? And then I'm like, oh man, I just asked a question. Okay. That's how we think, is by asking questions. Just put your thoughts on the paper to the bureaus. Why don't you have this information? It looks like it's missing to me. I want you to fill it in. Okay. See what they respond with. So let me go to our questions and comments here. So Alicia says, so John, these items missing that are reporting, we're not required to provide them with the information because they should have it, correct? My question is, who has a burden of proof to prove the inaccuracy? So what I would say, Alicia, is that you don't have to supply the information. So let's go back to the text of the FCRA. So let's just read this again. If the completeness, so let's skip the rest of it. If the completeness of any item of information is disputed by the consumer, the agency shall conduct a reasonable reinvestigation. The reason they call it a reinvestigation is theoretically, when the data comes in the first time, they investigate it. Not really, but let's just pretend they do. So we call a dispute a reinvestigation. So it doesn't say if something's incomplete, you have to supply the missing information. No, the bureau should supply the missing information. Okay. So here's one way to think about this. Imagine my credit report said, my name is John. Okay. So let me give you a couple examples. They give two versions of my name, John, Jon, maybe three versions, and Jonathan. That's all they put for my name. Well, my name is not Jon. That's inaccurate. So go back to our text. Any information, I can question the accuracy. My name is not Jon. That is inaccurate. I might say, well, it would be better if that's how you spelled your name, or your parents should have given you that. Well, they didn't. That my name is John. It's not Jon. They go, well, it's not a big deal. Well, if it ain't a big deal, why is it on my credit report? If it's not a big deal, get rid of it then. Okay. So what about Jonathan? That's not my name. They go, well, I kind of assume people named John, really their full legal name is John. Well, mine's not. It's John. It's John. Just like Kelly can be spelled Kelly, Kelli, Kelley. Your name is what your name is. Okay. The bureaus don't get to say, I don't like the way your parents spelled your name. Well, get over it. You got to put my name accurately. But remember what I said. All they have for my name is John, John, Jon, and Jonathan. That's incomplete, isn't it? Because yes, John is accurate for my first name, but what about my last name? That's incomplete. My name is incomplete. So I could challenge that. It's the same thing with your account. They say, well, we did put a year's worth of data, but this other, we didn't put it on there. Well, it's incomplete. Yeah, but the stuff we put on is accurate. Well, remember that my first name, John, that's accurate, but you got to put my last name, maybe my middle name, maybe my middle initial. It's incomplete without that. So I hope this makes sense that you don't necessarily have to supply that information. You can just point out it's missing and say, guys, do your job. All right, let's see here. Darlene says, what if this is written on the credit report? The status is paid, closed, 21,000 written off, account closed at credit grantor's request. Is this account a potential case for a junk debt buyer, or is it really paid? So with that, Darlene, it likely has not actually been paid. I'm not sure I've actually seen it exactly that way. So first thing, not sound like a broken record, make sure you're looking at your real reports. If it's been sold, you'll see usually in the comments. So let me pull this up here. Well, we don't have it here. Like usually there'd be something down here that would say comments, account has been sold or transferred to another lender, Equifax. So remember kind of the order of Equifax. They give you this little summary, and then you get this account history, and then you get the payment history, and then you get the details. And usually below that, somewhere it would say like sold or transferred, and they may tell you where it's sold to. And so I would just look at that because that will help you understand, has it actually been paid or not? All right, see, Flory says, I have much of these, but scared to dispute for fear they will delete my account. That's a legitimate concern. So I always tell my clients, we don't want to dispute anything that we would be upset about if it got deleted. Okay. And, if you are afraid it might be deleted, then my advice is don't dispute it. Okay. Particularly doing the dispute this way, where you're just like bringing all the errors to them, because what they may say is, oh man, we're never going to get this thing right. It's too much effort. Just delete the account. So you got to be comfortable with that. If it's, an account I opened up 20 years ago and 4 years ago, I have one 30-day late. Yeah, I'm not challenging that. Even if I know that 30-day late's wrong, because I don't want to lose that account. It's got such age to it, which is a factor of most credit scoring. But, a charged off account, that's probably not going to help my credit score. Okay. So for me, I'm like, I'd like that charged off account to be gone off of my credit report. So most of my clients who come to me, they have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 charged off accounts. We're not worried about those. Now, we got a mortgage that 3 years ago, we were 30 days late, but we've had it for 10 years. Yeah, I'm not challenging that because I don't want to potentially lose that mortgage account. But for charged off stuff, maybe a repossession, you just have to decide, is this worth the risk of it being deleted? Now, for, most of the time, we're like, I would love for it to be deleted. Like, that's not a risk, that's a benefit. Okay. But you do have to, carefully evaluate and make sure that you do this, because, and there's some misunderstandings out there. Some people say, well, they can't delete accounts. Yeah, they can delete accounts. That's always an option. They can just say, boom, we're deleting it. That's our investigation. We're deleting it. So it's always an option for the credit bureau. So just keep that in mind. See, Murley says, what are possible outcomes after you sued credit bureaus and furnishers? Will the accounts disappear on the report? So you can't make them take the accounts off of your report, but I'll say this, my rule is, it's a very simple approach. The non-negotiable is it's got to come off my credit report, unless, again, maybe there's something where, like, if you'll just fix it, I would like it to stay. That's very unusual. Normally, my non-negotiable is you got to delete it, and then you got to pay money. Now, we may or may not negotiate on the money. Sometimes I do. Sometimes we go to mediation and, we're here and they're here and we kind of meet somewhere. Other times I treat it kind of like buying a car from CarMax. I say, this is the price. If you respond with anything less than this, the price goes up. That's your punishment for it, because the true value is up here, but we're giving you a discounted value if you pay it right now. And so, it's, you pay the price or you don't settle. And if they say, well, we're not going to delete it, okay, we won't settle. It's pretty simple. And so, again, we can't make them delete it, but we can say, if you want to settle, you have to delete it, assuming that's what we want. All right, John says, I disputed bankruptcy and it doesn't seem like they did anything. When I contacted them again, they said, I can't dispute because I already disputed. But I told them the reason I disputed was because all the inaccuracies, such as all 3 credit bureaus reporting different reference numbers, locations. I asked them how they verify. They said my state court. I said that's not possible. Then they said LexisNexis. I said nope, I opted out. Okay, so I don't want to get bogged down. This is a great question. Let me just give you a short answer. We're talking about the actual bankruptcy. It's just like any other information. So let me go back to this. There's nothing special about bankruptcies. It is if the completeness or accuracy of any item of information. So let's just substitute. If the completeness or accuracy of my bankruptcy contained in my file is disputed, then they have to investigate. Now, this idea of opting out of LexisNexis, I'm just going to be very blunt with you. That does nothing, okay? It's just, I don't know why this myth stays out there. The idea is, well, if LexisNexis, if I opt out, they can't report to the bureaus. It's a misunderstanding. LexisNexis is a credit bureau and they are a vendor. Those are two different hats they wear. They have a credit report on you, but they also are hired by Equifax, Experian, TransUnion to go to the court and look at the court docket. Just like they could hire Bob, or they could hire me, or they could hire Merle or Andre to go to the courthouse and look up the document. So you may opt out of LexisNexis, and it does absolutely nothing for them to be able to still report to the bureaus this what's called public record. So what I would do is I would say, if you want to dispute this again, get the accurate information. In other words, you say they're reporting the wrong location, different reference numbers, et cetera. They may have different open dates, different discharge dates. And for this, since you've already disputed a couple of times, I would just say, here's the court document. Make it 100% accurate, 100% complete, or get this off my report. Don't talk about LexisNexis. This thing about, they say, well, we verified that with the court. And then basically you go get a letter from the court that says, we don't verify anything. And I understand why people sort of sell this solution. It's sort of meaningless, okay? Excuse me. Because the credit bureaus are not verifying literally with the court. They're verifying with a vendor who goes to the court. So they're sort of skipping a step when they say, we verified that with the court. What they really mean is, no, we sent Bob down there to look at the court file, and he told us, yes, you filed bankruptcy on this day. So just sort of follow the process of, here's the inaccuracies, here's the incompleteness. And if you dispute it before, you have to be careful, because they'll say, well, we're not going to investigate it again. You want to make sure you say, here's the new information, like here's my discharge order, showing the location, the case number. Here's the first page of my petition showing when I filed it, whatever the inaccuracies are. I'll say this, I would not spend much time trying to get rid of a bankruptcy. It may affect your score a little bit, but if you're going for a loan of any significance, they don't need your credit report to know you filed bankruptcy. And when they see you filed bankruptcy, it's not on your credit report, they go, wait a minute, something squirrely is going on here. So to me, it's not really worth making much effort, but I would just treat it like anything else. If it's inaccurate, incomplete, challenge it. Let's see. Andre says, I have a collection account from Verizon on all three. Is Verizon required to have filled in accurate data under Metro 2? I've been with Verizon from 2006 to 2018, but they only report from 2019 and beyond. So again, Metro 2 is the industry standard. I would say for most people, don't have any concern about Metro 2. Okay. It's kind of meaningless. Like, I'm disputing wearing a red shirt versus a blue shirt. Okay. It doesn't make any difference. What matters is the information accurate and is it complete? Well, if Verizon, when they report, they only report when you're negative, and they usually will report no payment history, or it'll start like, last month. And sometimes if it's Equifax, it'll have a little TN. Let me see. I don't know that this will be on here. Let me just look. Yeah, actually, let me share this with you. So, see right here, TN. So on a Verizon, it'll maybe just have collection right here. It'll have a C, or it might have TN, and then it'll have a bunch of like no data. TN is too new to rate. So the way I would dispute that is say, hey, look at, you've got down here the date open. Where's the data? It's missing. It's incomplete. Fill it in. All those months I was on time, I want you to fill in. It's sort of like my name. You can't just say, well, we got your first name right. Well, you got to put my last name too. Well, John, we have your street address, 123. I'm like, yeah, but my street address is 123 Main Street. You can't just put 123. Yeah, but that's accurate, but it's not complete. Okay. So that's what I would do with Verizon. And then see, Leslie, debt park by Midwest Recovery, order to remove all reporting they placed fraudulently all 3 credit bureaus. Instead, my bogus account was moved to a sister collection company. Now it's reported by another debt collection company. What do I do? So, Leslie, I would say the short answer is I'm not sure. Okay, I don't know specifically what's happened here. If you want to, just email me back. Say, hey, here's the order saying they have to remove this stuff. Here's what my credit report looked like when it was Midwest Recovery. Now here's what it looks like. And let's see. Maybe they violated the order. Maybe that can't be on your credit report, or maybe it can. I don't know. Let's look at it. And then also look for, again, those inaccuracies or incomplete information. Let's see here. Merle says, thank you, John. You're very welcome, Merle. Yeah, Andre, too new to rate or report. That's absolutely right. Darlene, thank you for sharing your knowledge, helping beyond words. You're very, very welcome. Thank you for the kind words. Yeah, Leslie, just email me about that. And okay, so Merle says, 2 of the consumer lawyers I spoke with are downplaying these errors and said this: the FCRA requires either that non-compliance be willful or you suffered actual damages. Problems referenced in your correspondence are minor in nature. For this reason, they're unlikely to be held to be willful. So that's a very common response. There aren't many lawyers that do this, and most that do this would respond that way. I think it's how can I say this? It's sort of being stuck in an old way of thinking. Okay, so let's go back to the text. If the completeness or accuracy of any item, so let's substitute the word what the lawyer said, minor. If the completeness or accuracy of any minor item of information contained in Merle's file at Equifax is disputed by Merle, and Merle notifies the agency directly, Equifax shall, free of charge, conduct a reasonable investigation to determine whether it's inaccurate. And then again, we go down to paragraph 5 that says, if any reinvestigation of a minor item, okay, that item, that minor item of information is found to be inaccurate or incomplete or cannot be verified, Equifax shall promptly delete that item. So that's sort of follow the chain here. If it's inaccurate or incomplete and you properly disputed it and they can't fix it, they got to get rid of it. So is it really minor? Because now we have an account on our report that should not be there. So maybe it's not minor. Okay. So again, you're going to find very few lawyers that would agree with me. My law partner agrees with me. Blaine Dixon, who's on this call, on this webinar from Tennessee, he agrees with me, and I agree with him. And so most other lawyers do not. And part of it is there's sort of this obsession of filing these in federal court. And there are some issues now with that. I won't bore you with the details. We don't do that. We file in state court. Sort of gets around that issue. It ends up in federal court, but anyway, it's just, I think, lawyers not being creative enough to think about it and sort of being like, well, this is how we've done it for the last 10 years, and I can't see anything other than the way we've done it. And I think it misses the boat on a lot of significant errors, because this minor bit of information, if it's not corrected, then the account's got to come off your report. Well, if it's a charged off account that should be off your report and instead it's on your report, is that really a minor thing? I think it's a big deal. So that would be my response to it. All right, so Andre says, what do I do if Verizon does not provide the days past due or CRAs choose not to include? Well, I would just point out they're missing that. See what the bureaus do. And, on any of this, if they don't fix it, and I won't show you this section, but it's section N and O. It talks about, is this willful? If it's willful, you can get what are called statutory damages and punitive damages. That's pretty hard under the FCRA, just the way the judges tend to interpret it. But the other section is negligence. And if it's negligent, you get actual damages. Well, what are your actual damages? And this varies by where you are in the country, but most places say you can get emotional distress damages. I get this information on my credit report that should not be there. I mean, of course, that's upsetting. That's the view we take. You may have economic damages. I got 5% interest rate instead of 3.5%. That difference would be my economic damages. We sort of take that out 30 years for your mortgage. We bring that back to present value. Okay. So it's, $17,853 or $100,000 or whatever it is. You may have lost a job because of this, may have lost a security clearance and had to leave the military or leave a civilian job. I mean, so there's all sorts of actual damages. And again, I think some lawyers just get sort of blinders on and go, well, I just can't see anything. Well, take a step back. Think about this creatively. How has the client been harmed by this? They lose a loan, lose a job, lose a security clearance, lose the ability to buy a car. Maybe they had to wait 6 months and they had a broken down car and they had to get rides from friends and spend money on Uber. Well, the bureaus say, it's no big deal. Well, you do it then. It's like in personal injury, which is my background. There'll be some giant needle that goes in your back. And because the defendant was negligent, you have to have, surgery and treatments. And they're like, well, it's no big deal. It's just this needle. Well, let's put this giant needle in your back. Wait a minute. I don't want that in my back. Yeah. See, what do we say? Minor surgery is what happens to other people. We don't have minor surgery. Okay. So anyway, hope that helps you. See, Johnny, you got to run. Yeah, I do too. I didn't realize we've gone quite a while here. I've really enjoyed this. Hope this has been helpful to you. If you guys want me to do this again, just let me know and you can send me, some reports in and we'll look at those together. I really want all of us to look at this and figure out the errors. And there are errors that you guys spotted that I had not seen. And I'm like, hey, that's a really good point. And so there is value in all of us looking at this. Let's see. John says, John Martinez, have a quick question about what should I do if I settle the account, but they don't want to remove the late payment and the 3 credit bureaus have a different data report. So the question would be, is the late payment, is that accurate or inaccurate? Is it complete or is it incomplete? I mean, if it's accurate, like you were late June 2018, you settled it this past month, well, then that could stay on there as long as it's accurate. But you want to look at the whole report and see, is the whole report, does it have, everything that's on there, is it accurate? Is everything complete? Are you willing to challenge it with the idea they might delete it? So sometimes people want sort of a surgical strike, like, I just want this 30-day late from 2 years ago removed, which I get. Okay. I understand that. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I understand how this process works. But even though you try to remove something precisely, remember they can remove the whole account. So that's why I always say, like, look at the whole account, look at, is it complete? Is it accurate? And are you comfortable challenging that? Let's see here. Okay, Flurry, can this be defamation? So generally not. It gets complicated. There's something called preemption where federal law kind of shoves state law out of the way. Defamation be state law. So normally you'd use the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the federal law. Tony says, excellent class. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thanks for being here. Let's see. So let's see. Stay Focused says, how do we get a replay of this webinar? You should get it automatically. If you don't, just let me know. But it's supposed to be automated from this webinar platform where it'll just send it out to you. I think it takes basically as long as the class. And I realize we've been going like an hour and 45 minutes. So probably take a couple hours and then it will be ready and it'll shoot that out to you. And see, Andre says, maybe next you can teach us how to become consumer protection lawyers. So I'm not sure I would advise, the expense of law school, but, if you're a lawyer, we can certainly talk about, that. But, definitely educate yourself on this so you can either do your own disputes or if you hire a credit repair place or something like that, you'll know, are they doing this the right way? Okay. Like I get my car worked on. I don't know anything about cars. I mean, I have no idea if they're doing the right thing, the wrong thing. If I was, an expert mechanic, I would know, even though I'm not doing it. I'm like, wait a minute, that's right or that's wrong. So that's what I want you to be able to do here. And let's see, John says, do you work with any attorneys in Hawaii yet? No, I don't actually. But, if you've got an attorney who's a buddy out there that wants to do this type of work, and I had to go out there for business, that would be just terrible. So, but no, I don't have anybody there. Let's see, Leslie, appreciate all that front honest information. Learned so much. We'll email about the debt parking issue. Yeah, just do that. And so Darlene says, can a paralegal guide people in consumer credit repair legally? So, and this will be the last question, and I'll let you guys go. So, Darlene, I would answer this in two ways. One, if you're working for a lawyer and that lawyer is doing credit repair, maybe where they're charging money, okay? Or if they're doing like what my firm does, where we help people without charging them any money. We make our money when we sue the bad guys, okay? You certainly could, like if you were a paralegal working for me or working for Blaine Dixon, you certainly could help people, okay? Now, if you're doing it on your own, then you fall under that Credit Repair Organization Act. It's a federal law that governs credit repair places. And, you want to make sure that you're following that law. So whether you're a paralegal, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a real estate broker, it doesn't matter what you are. If you fall within that Credit Repair Organization Act, which is basically you're charging money to do credit repair, then you have to make sure you comply with it. Okay. But, at my firm, for example, we have folks that work for us that do help folks, because I don't do everything myself. I mean, I'm directing everything, but I'm not necessarily looking at every credit report. I have people that help me do that. So hopefully that answers your question. And guys, this has been a lot of fun. Just let me know. It sounded like at least there were a number of people that wanted to do this again. So I don't mind doing this again. I don't want it to be just, repetitive, but particularly if you guys have some credit reports you want to send me, just redact everything. Send it to me just where like, here's the account and I can pop that up. I did get one that I did not get to, and I apologize for that. So we'll use that next time. But if you want to send me some more, and if you're in Alabama, if you're in Tennessee, let me know. Let Blaine Dixon know. If you're in another state, we can talk about that. Normally, we don't sort of directly help with disputes in another state unless there's something unusual. But you may have already done the disputes in another state, and we can either file a lawsuit in your state with a lawyer there, or sometimes we just file them in Alabama or in Tennessee, and it might get moved, but it may also just stay there. So there's different options. And you guys have a great day, and I will see you guys next week. Okay, bye-bye.